The LA, Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles has extended our stay-at-home orders. Now, personally, for me, I think it's important that we flatten the curve, that we are careful, that we don't, continue the spread of this. However, at the same time, right now, we've seen what the HEROES Act is. We've seen what the CARES Act was. We've gotten one stimulus payment of $1,200. I have lots of friends who work in the service industry, restaurant industry, have gotten their payments, but that runs out soon. We're not necessarily getting more from the government, and this $1,200 payment may come way later. People still have to pay rents. Landlords don't care. So it's like, yes, okay, stay at home. But then don't ask us to go back to work. Don't take out the unemployment. Don't, you have to provide for people if you're going to still keep the economy semi-closed. And I think the problem has been that it depends on what industry you're in, and it depends on what state you're in. And so this is all a mess. And I just want to know how you feel about that in particular.
Well, I think it's very telling. And, we can all use our own communities, for example. And with you and I, the community is the Los Angeles area. You look at Mayor Garcetti, his Twitter feed, and it's tweet after tweet of telling people to stay home, which I do agree with that.
Right.
But the problem is that they're asking us to do our part, but they don't want to do theirs.
Right.
They don't want to do their part of helping people out in this situation, because this is no fault of our own. It's not like we're just like, hey, we're just not going to go to work anymore. No, there's a pandemic and people can't work. That's what's happening. So, never once have I seen a tweet of, hey, this is what we're going to do, to help people that are facing issues with rent. This is what we're going to do. I mean, they had that rent moratorium through the end of April. I don't even know if it's been renewed. And that's pretty much all they did. So, okay, until the end of April, your landlord can't kick you out. We saved you. You're good now. I mean, the People's City Council, their demands are just basic demands you would want in a situation like this.
Yeah.
No vacancy. Let's make sure that, homeless people have shelters over them, because it's endangering everybody, not just homeless people, but everybody in a community when people are unhoused in a pandemic like this. So we need to have no vacancy. We need to provide shelter for people. We need to, provide just complete rent forgiveness and mortgage forgiveness too. So that way it's like, okay, the landlord's not getting their rent check. Okay, well, they don't have to pay their mortgage either. So no one has to pay. It's just completely forgiven. And then when this is over, we'll just go back to paying our rents and our mortgages like we normally do. And who can just deal with it? The freaking banks, who have gotten trillions, because there's the only ones who wouldn't be getting their money in this case. And they've already gotten enough. So they're fine. And that's the problem. It's the fact that, and that's why when I see the people protesting for like, we'll reopen the economy. It's like, look, that's a misdirected thing,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not reopen the economy. It's we need to do what we need to do to flatten this curve. And we're doing our part, and the government's not doing theirs in providing for people during this time. And in other countries, they're doing so much better.
Yeah. And it's not even like they're giving people like ponies. It's literally like normal basic things that you would want. And it's interesting, we mentioned about reopening the economy. A lot of the things that have begun reopening in places like Florida, where I was just at, is like nail salons, hair salons, things like, yeah, those would be nice to have, but who is that service for? That service is a luxury service. It's not an essential need, correct? So the people who are going to go back to work on that are the working class. The people who are going to expose themselves are the working class. The people who will benefit from it are the classes that can afford to make those luxury purchases. So again, this is also a discussion on class. And
big time.
Oh, hugely. And yesterday there was one protest on canceling rent. And canceling rent means literally like a stop on paying rent and mortgages for that time. You don't have to pay it back. It's different than a freeze.
Right.
And people were protesting in LA, and this is by the LA Tenants Union. Now, LA Tenants Union has multiple locations. This location was near Echo Park. This is something that I think could lead potentially to strengthening ties with something like a general strike, because that would be part of one of the asks we have. And I just tweeted and I said people are out here protesting cancel rent Los Angeles because Los Angeles has extended their stay-at-home order. They can't work if they have to stay home, but they lack income. Americans have received a one-time payment of $1,200. Some have yet to receive unemployment or any of it, to be honest. And so this is the LA Tenants Unit. And just so you guys know, guys can go to my Twitter. I will post this other places, but you have rights as a tenant. And you have 12 months to pay the rent debt you agree during the crisis. So there's a lot more information that I feel like I want to do like a special. I know we did one with Elena Pop, and she's really good if you haven't spoken to her, but just so people know their rights, because there are a lot of people that your landlord is going to come in and demand something from you, but there are certain rights we do have, so we need to start paying attention to that. This is where like I think we can do a lot as the movement, like locally. The time is ripe to do that.
Yeah, and I'll just add one thing I'll put, because I've attended some of the protests that the People's City Council have organized, and I believe the People's City Council and the tenants unions, they work together. I'm pretty certain here in the Los Angeles area. Like there's the LA Tenants Union, there's a Glendale specific one, there's a Pasadena specific one, and then they all work alongside the People's City Council. I believe they're all working together, and at those protests, we practice social distancing. Most of the protests take place in cars where you're driving around Mayor Garcetti's house, and the people who are outside are the organizers of the protests, and they're staying 6 feet apart. So these are social distancing protests and this is some of the power that we do have.
And everyone was wearing a mask when I went. Everybody was pretty much taking the precautions they need. A lot of cars were honking and protesting. That's what you heard. And Nico brought up a good point. He said, sorry, I'm against the California's 3-month stay-at-home order if it's true. The government has spent too much time telling us what we can't do and telling us how horrible people are if they don't abide by their every word, but then they give us nothing and offer zero real solutions. So again, I think the point is, it's not that people don't want to be safe. It's just that not everybody is going to be a Republican out there protesting for the economy to open either. It's more so that it's misguided, as you said, that people are just scared that they're not going to have the income to survive. So the government isn't pulling their end of the weight for this. And so that in itself makes the situation worse, because it makes people be like, no, then I don't want you to tell me what to do because you're not giving me anything. So it's kind of like this like continuous rebellion in a relationship. And it just puts us all in honestly in more danger. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think we definitely, there's a lot more to do, I think, in regards to the rent strike, but I think that's a really good movement. If anybody,
I say rent strike and general strike are completely connected. I mean, I've used both of those hashtags neck and neck, where it's just like rent strike, general strike, national strike. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I just think like there's, like what Shahid Buttar has said many times is, think globally, act locally. And there's a lot of work. There's a lot of these people. And there was a substantial amount of people there. And I honestly think that if those little movements of rent strikes were able to coalesce with a general strike, then we could see something big happening, especially with all the HEROES Act, with all the things that the government has fallen so short on. That's where we go to next. And that takes us back to our whole, like, the movement isn't necessarily dead. The movement isn't necessarily entirely co-opted. It's because we have to see that the movement is beyond the electorate. And I think that's where we're at.